Now, we want to hit the Joseph narrative. This is going to be fast. I want to compare Jacob and Joseph. Jacob and Joseph, I think in the book of Genesis, are compared. Jacob and Joseph, two very different characters, but yet similar things. For example, in both the Jacob story and in the Joseph story, you have the supremacy of the younger brother. Jacob is the younger brother, Esau is the older brother. Jacob is supreme. Joseph is the younger brother, the older brothers are all corrupt, Joseph is the winner. Okay, supremacy of the younger brother. In both the Jacob story and the Joseph story, you get strife and deception in the family. By the way, can you see deception, the name Jacob? Can you see in strife the name Israel? Do you remember when I started out Jacob, I started out with strife and deception? Those are Jacob's two names, Jacob and Israel. And basically, the parental favoritism leading to a rival. Did Jacob favor Joseph over the other kids? Did Jacob favor Joseph over the other kids? Remember that coat of many colors? Okay, so he favored them. And whenever you have parental favoritism, does it leave to the brothers and sisters duking it out? And so parental favoritism, sibling rivalry, they're both strife in their families. And in this case, both the younger, the guy who was the special one, is separated from his family for 20 years. Jacob is separated from his family up in Haran. Joseph is separated from his family down in Egypt. And then both Jacob and Joseph prosper in a foreign land. Joseph is going to come up, so he's right under Pharaoh. Jacob gets all this wealth from Laban and things like that, so they both prosper in a foreign land. And then finally, lastly here, both of them at the end of their lives are reunited with their estranged brothers. Okay, both of them Jacob is reunited with Esau. There's some problems with that. Joseph is reunited with his brothers. At the end, you remember Joseph, and they kind of come together. So do you see that the stories of Jacob and Joseph are similar somewhat in the way the story forms, although they're two totally different characters? Now, another major shift. I want to compare Joseph. Joseph is so different. The Joseph narrative in Genesis is so different. And I want to show a connection between Joseph and what I want to call wisdom literature. Joseph and wisdom literature, and just make some comparison. In order to do that, let me tell you a story. I'm going to start a story like this. Once upon a time, do you know you're getting a story when you hear that? Once upon a time, there was a person of very high status, and the person of high status had a problem. And he went all through his kingdom, searching through his kingdom. What story am I? I want you to think of a story. The person of high status goes through all his kingdom trying to find somebody to solve his problem. And finally, he tries and it fits. And then he takes the person of low status, and what happens to the person of low status? Solves the king's problem, and she grows and is put over the whole kingdom, and they all live happily ever after. What story am I telling? That's some of you saying Cinderella. That's the Cinderella story. I think some of you said Pretty Woman. Is that the? Okay. No. Actually, I'm dead serious. Is a story of Pretty Woman built on the Cinderella story? Do you understand? There's a form to this story that's very similar. Okay? Now, with the Joseph story, is that what you have with the Joseph story? The king's got a problem. He has his dreams and nobody can solve it. He finally goes down into prison and finds this person in prison who can interpret his dreams. Does he then interpret his dreams correctly? What happens to the person of low status? He's lifted up with the person of high status, and they all live happily ever after. He does the famine thing, and they go 7 years without food. He's got food for them and things, and they're good to go. That's the same kind of structure of the Cinderella story as you have in the Joseph story. That's why the Joseph story is so beautiful. It follows that same narrative kind of pattern. Now, does Joseph resist the wild woman? Remember, Potiphar's wife goes after him and things. By the way, if that happened anywhere else in the Bible, there would have been a very different outcome. But Joseph is a man above reproach, does not take advantage of Potiphar. And by the way, even in his uprightness, does he end up in jail? Yeah, so this guy is good. Now, by the way, in Proverbs, does Proverbs' father warn his son not to mess around with wild women like that? Yeah, Proverbs chapter 5 and 7 is this major wisdom warning about wild women. Stay away. Joseph actually models that. Are wise men good at interpreting dreams? Do you get wise men to interpret dreams? Daniel is a wise man in Mesopotamia, and Daniel interprets the dreams for Nebuchadnezzar. Joseph interprets the dreams for Pharaoh. He's considered a wise man, and a wise man knows how to interpret dreams. So the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. And so he saves during the years of plenty, and then has the 7 years of plenty with the cupbearer and the baker and the stuff in prison. Here's another one. You may not catch this. In Egyptian wisdom literature, the wise man is called the silent man. Now, by the way, in America, is the wise man the silent man, or is the wise man the one that's always shooting off his mouth? But in ancient Egyptian literature, and I'm talking for 2,000 years now, the wise man was considered the silent man. Did Joseph hide his emotions from his brother? When he first met his brothers, did Joseph hide and was he silent? And he plays this role of the wise sage. And so Joseph plays the role of the silent man here. And when I say wisdom literature, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, okay? And so this fear of God motif actually occurs with Joseph. The fear of God motif, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of God motif occurs with Joseph. And then lastly, and this is their favorite, we'll end with this. Jacob the father dies, and now Joseph is left with his 11 brothers. His 11 brothers are scared to death. What are they afraid of? Joseph is in a position of power. They're in a position of weakness. And the brothers come to Joseph and say, Joseph, don't kill us. We didn't really mean to hurt you those years. Joseph says what? You intended to harm me, but God, what? Intended it for good. But God intended it for good. This reversal is God do the reversal thing. Take what's evil and turn it into something that's good. And Joseph says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. And the whole thing has changed. This is God's redemptive work. He takes what's bad and he turns it into something that's wonderful. And he does that with Joseph. And he does that with our lives too. We are done Genesis. All right. Okay. We'll start on Exodus next time. Okay. See you Thursday.